Greetings and welcome back. Welcome back to my channel for another video. And tonight we're going to go over the trial updates of GRAYSON. Now, GRAYSON has been accused and is on trial for taking the life of SONYA Massey on July the 6th, 2024. So, again, welcome to everyone here and abroad. This case has garnered nationwide attention, and some of the things you may hear will be disturbing to some. I had some nasty comments in the past, so I will put up my fair use disclaimer and also the viewer discretion disclaimer, because that is truly highly advised. So, many of you that have been following this case know that on July the 6th, SONYA Massey, who called for help, she thought there was a prowler outside or someone outside. GRAYSON and his partner, who had not been named up until recently, his name was Dawson Farley. Farley. The reason why that rings a bell to me is because those of you that remember the movie The Negotiator, Farley was one of the people in the control room that messed up when Danny Roman, played by Samuel L. Jackson, was teasing him a little bit. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting. And here's a picture of Dawson Farley, who we learned was on probation or in his probationary period. 10 months on the force. That's him on the right. So, they arrived at our home around 12:30. I'll say approximately 12:30. No more than 30 minutes later, after she called for help, she lost her life. Now, there has been a lot of speculation, and in the court of law, no matter how gruesome this is, to be fair, you're innocent until proven guilty. And as we know, the onus is on the state to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt to GRAYSON, I'm sorry. This is a lot. Is guilty the first degree taking of the life of SONYA Massey. Now, as we know, those of you that have been following, he's claimed self-defense. And I've heard a lot of people who watch different parts of body cam footage and different angles that she didn't have the pot or she wasn't throwing the pot, but in the trial, it's actually said that she did have the pot. What they're trying to get at is if she was a threat and if she was throwing the pot. There's been some twists and turns, and a lot of people would believe from the body cam, which I understand because I can't watch it, it should be a closed case. However, unfortunately, that's not how it always works. What may seem to be a slam dunk may not. And there's a possibility, a real possibility, that Sean Grayson, if he is sentenced, and I have to say that because, as I've said, I've seen some things that just from the optics, you would think a person would be found guilty. However, they were acquitted. Keep in mind, for the wrongful unaliving, her family was awarded $10 million. Now, I'm not sure if those funds have been dispersed as of yet, but that was earlier this year. So, John Grayson and his partner, Dawson Farley, went to her home, had a cordial conversation, but shortly thereafter, things began to escalate. And again, gray areas, but what people are trying to prove and disprove is what led Johnson to discharge his duty weapon not once, not twice, but 3 times. And subsequently took the life of SONYA Massey. Now again, the pot plays a huge role in this. Many people are saying that she definitely threw the pot. But then there are others talking about the distance from where she was and her being confused because one is telling her put it down, and once she did that, it just turned confusing. Yeah, and I've read a lot of the documents as far as the statements, and to me, thus far, I believe the handling has been messy, and the outcome, I could say off the bat, he definitely should serve time. But again, we have to look at imminent threat of bodily harm or worse, or immediate threat. And then you have to look at if procedures were followed. Law enforcement are taught to de-escalate. And as the testimony was given and cross-examination, the state did a good job the first couple of days. The last day, within the last hour, it's a little bit dicey. So again, it's all in the hands of the jury. But please remember, at the end of the day, the grand scheme of things, 2 families have been ruined. no matter what the outcome. So keep an open mind. And there's one person, hammock camping or camping hammock. You've left numerous messages. I'm inclined to believe that you might be a member of the force or a former member of the force or a family member just because of some of the things that you said, but you never, ever addressed the fact that this man was chewed out by his superiors and all of the things that he's done. Now, I'm not taking up for SONYA Massey because there are some things that came out that I'll go over as well. But it was known she had mental health issues. I believe it's safe to say that it's known that Sean Grayson had disciplinary issues. It is mighty funny to me that this large hulk of a man has shrunken down. Now I understand that he has, or he's fighting C. And prayers to him because this C has taken out so many people, and I can't imagine what pain he may be feeling. So I want to put that out there. I learned you don't do or say evil because someone else may. So without further delay, I'm going to be reading from a couple of sources and condensing what has happened in the last few days now. Day 1, of course, was jury selection. Day 2, there were motions and 2 of the charges taken off the table. You want to concentrate on red rum, and we know what that is backwards. Again, everyone, thank you for tuning in. If you'd be so kind, can you thumbs up? And again, all comments are welcome. Just be respectful. Again, thank you. And remember, give yourselves a round of applause for making it 2 through another day, because each day is a blessing. And yes, I'm covered up because I have a slight cold. So, excuse me if you hear me cough or sniffle. I coughed a couple of times during my live earlier. It was an excellent one. We spoke about the government shutdown and 5th dimension feminism, for those of you that are interested. So let's get on with the trial of Sean Grayson. The trial of former Deputy Sheriff Sean Grayson began on October the 20th, as I mentioned earlier, and it began with jury selection and then opening statements. Day 3 actually began with the testimony. Around 8:30 or so, members of the family of SONYA Massey arrived at the court, as well as friends and family of Sean Grayson. Sean Grayson's attorney, Mark Wyckoff, arrived as well. Judge Cadigan arrived approximately 9 o'clock, spoke to everyone. Shortly, the jury entered, and John Millizer, Sangamon County's state's attorney, arrived and presented the state's opening statement. Millizer proceeded with providing the timeline on the day, that fateful day, that Sonya Massey had her life taken. He presented that to the jury. He goes on to tell the jury that Sean Grayson didn't turn on his body camera, ignoring policing standards. That's key to me for several reasons. The times that I've been stopped, and yes, I've been stopped, and that's for not wearing a seatbelt or during a checkpoint. And I witnessed something the other day, and one of the sheriffs came over to me, and it's always been kind, at least in these last 20 some years. When I was much younger, it wasn't like that, but they were very kind, and they turned on their BWC or body worn cameras, and they let me know that, as I mentioned, John Grayson had not turned his on. A lot of the footage that people saw was that of his partner, Dawson Farley. I'll show you this picture again. That's him to the right, and that's the, I don't want to know what to call Jack Campbell, but he stepped down, but he didn't want to. He actually retired after being under a lot of heat and pressure after Sonya Massey lost her life in the way and the manner that she did. So, the three charges of first-degree red rum and how they differ. Number one, the intent to take the life of Sonya Massey. Number two, doing an act knowing that it would take the life of Sonya Massey. And number three, doing an act or knowing that there's a strong possibility that the loss of life or great bodily harm would be done to Sonya Massey. So those are the three elements Millizer must prove beyond a shadow of a doubt to the jury. And I might add that there's only one African American juror, and it's a male. Keep in mind that this was moved from Sangamon County to Peoria, Illinois. Prosecution stated, it will be clear that the defendant, without lawful justification in the home of Sonya Massey, fired his weapon and took her life. He did not follow training. He did not follow policies and is guilty of first-degree red rum. Daniel Foltz, who was also a defense attorney for Sean Grayson, presented his opening statement and explained to the jury that the state will present its evidence first throughout the trial and ask the jury wait to hear the defense's argument before forming an opinion, which is absolutely fair. And I would expect his attorneys to do nothing less. Fault further said Grayson believed that he would suffer great bodily harm from the boiling pot of water. So, again, this boiling pot of water is being framed as a weapon or a possible weapon. Fault continues and says the evidence will show, even though his orders were firm, unequivocal, and repeated, Miss Massey made the decision to lift the pot of boiling water over her head and throw it at Deputy Grayson. It was only at that moment, and I'll repeat that, it was only at that moment that Deputy Grayson discharged his weapon. Faults then said something that I thought was preposterous, but again, that's just me. Others have expressed, like I said in my comments, and they were not too kind. But again, I thought it was deplorable. Fault stated, what happened to Miss Massey was a tragedy, but it was not a crime. It continued with a 15-minute break before the first witness. The first witness that was called, Lieutenant Eric Weston, Weston, of the ISP, Illinois State Police, Criminal Investigations Zone 4. Lieutenant Weston, put his picture up there, and that's Sean Grayson, because this is who this trial is about. He's on trial. Lieutenant Weston shares that officers in an officer-involved looting are required to go to the hospital to undergo a general check. I'm certain that's protocol. First responders, they see horrible things daily. Well, some do, and I wouldn't imagine that they shouldn't go get checked. And also, a crime scene officer went to the hospital that morning to meet with Grayson and Deputy Dawson Farley to pick up their body cameras. After watching body cam footage, Lieutenant Weston stated that he couldn't make up his mind on whether Grayson's actions were justified and said that he needed to tell State Attorney Milsner immediately. Miser approaches Lieutenant Weston and hands him a sheet containing information about Grayson's training and employment history. Now, those of you that have been following this horrible, horrible case, many of you should remember that John Grayson has a very checkered past as it relates to his employment history and the discharge from the military as it relates to DUI. Grayson had crisis intervention training. He took a course in 2023. SONYA Massey, I'll put her photo up again. lost her life in 2024. Grayson began as a part-time officer in August of 2020. So I wouldn't even call him a veteran. Weston continues to testify and tells the jury that Grayson worked in 6 different departments from 2020 to 2024. Again, Sean Grayson, who you see photographed, worked in 6 different departments from 2020 to 2024, and some of the employment dates overlap. The investigation Lieutenant Weston conducted was, and I quote, all hands on deck. He called it for all the agents in the office to work on this. Mark Wyckoff, Grayson's other defense attorney, began his cross-examination of Lieutenant Weston. Wyckoff is illuminating that Lieutenant Weston isn't fully present for the investigation. He is only the supervisor and is trying to get just a clearer picture of the entire investigation team. Wyckoff walks over to Grayson to pat him on the back while talking about Grayson's body-worn camera and how it memorialized the incident. I'm not too sure about that. Lieutenant Weston said he would not use the term memorialize, but that it recorded parts of the incident. Again, that's a big question. Why? Why only record parts of the incident? Was that intentional? Sean Grayson and Sean Grayson supporters, was that intentional? Or did you forget to cut on your camera because the rookie, if you will, your partner, Dawson Farley, had it on? But you've been in uniform and working full time. A lot longer. So I said this is a lot longer than Dawson Farley. So if he remembered his training to turn on his body-worn camera, what was your problem? What was your excuse? Because you have a history, Sean Grayson, of lying and not telling the truth, being sloppy, being inept. Yet and still, you found yourself employed at Sangamon County. And rumor has it because you knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody. Because with your background, in my opinion, you should have never been employed. Wyckoff circles back to the fact that upon the initial search of the crime scene, only 2 casings were collected. Once Lieutenant Weston watched, it traveled through her brain. Again, that's incorrect. I think they made it seem as though they were actually in the courtroom, and they're reading dog, if you will. At any rate, Wyckoff, and that's one of Grayson's defense attorneys, claimed that the pot was a weapon. And this part right here is really concerning to me. And it speaks volumes of this entire unit collectively did not collect this pot, which they are claiming is a weapon. And to be fair, it may have been. We're not sure yet. But I have to be fair and say this. They didn't collect the pot until 2 weeks after the incident, again, that occurred on July 6th. Why? Number one, did you not collect all 3 casings? Why didn't you know that there was a third one? And then why would it take 2 weeks, 2 entire weeks, to collect the pot that everyone has talked about? And again, especially Grayson's family and friends and co-workers, I'm sure, referenced the pot. Why did it sit for 2 weeks? I myself question that. So you're not going to get an argument out of me. I believe this entire investigation was mishandled from the beginning. Was it by design? Was it by inexperienced personnel? Milheiser clarifies that not all officer-related looting cases are criminal cases. Lieutenant Weston agreed. They took a break, and the next witness, again, it's day 3, the first day of testimony. Catherine Barton, a Sangamon County dispatcher. Mary Beth Rogers, assistant state attorney, is asking Catherine Barton to explain how dispatching works. Rogers asks her, what call type is a prowler? Witness Barton responded, a prowler is a call that you would label a suspicious person after dark, someone who is not where they are supposed to be. So again, Barton responded, a prowler is a call that you would label a suspicious person after dark. Keep in mind, this was after 12:30, so it was the wee hours of the morning. Someone who is not where they are supposed to be. SONYA Massey called, and Massey gave her address. It sounded like there was someone outside the residence making noise on the side of the house. The call with Massey was ultimately disconnected. Rogers approaches the stand and hands Barton a recording of the 911 call. The 911 call plays in the court, and there is no cross. Court went on break again. Star witness for the state, none other than Sean Grayson's former partner, Deputy Dawson Farley, who described his relationship with Grayson as a work friendship. Here in the notes that Grayson listens intently to the answers of Deputy Dawson Farley. Farley has given us extensive recount of what happened the morning SONYA Massey was fatally injured. Deputy Farley stated that when the door was opened, the female, who was SONYA Massey, stated, "Please don't hurt me." Shortly thereafter, a cousin of SONYA Massey walked out of the courtroom crying. Milheiser stated, "What did you think when SONYA Massey said, 'I rebuke you in the name of Jesus'?" Again, that's key in this case because that's the premise that Sean Grayson is also using as it relates to his being in fear and his acting in self-defense. Farley, again, that's the tall gentleman in a suit, stated confusion and did not see Massey's comment as a threat. Farley saw Grayson draw his weapon and point it at Massey. Farley then testified that he pulled his weapon as well, following his training and backing his partner. According to Farley and his testimony, he did not see or hear anything that required him to draw his firearm. So I'm not really sure why he did it, but as he continued, Farley testified that he saw SONYA Massey duck behind a counter. Grayson stepped in front. This is key as well. Grayson stepped in front of Farley, his partner, who had only been working for 10 months. Yet they are trained not to step in front of their partner when weapons are drawn. Farley then went on to say that he heard Grayson say, "Drop," and he heard the 3 sounds that came from a discharged weapon. Farley then testified that he tried to run back to the doorway to tell dispatch that there were 3 discharges. He came back to the scene, put his firearm away, and attempted to get a medical bag. Grayson said, "It's an above-the-neck shot, and not to bother getting a bag." Farley testified, again, this is very key. Farley testified that Sean Grayson said, "There's no need to bother getting a bag." And Farley testified he was caught off guard by Grayson's comment. Deputy Dawson Farley testified that he grabbed a dish towel and applied pressure to Massey's wound to try to stop the bleeding. Deputy Dawson Farley emphasized that he was not scared or nervous about anything Massey did or thought that she would hurt him. She did not alarm him. Again, testimony from Sean Grayson's partner, Dawson Farley. Farley continued and clarified in his written report that he felt fear, but the fear he felt and the reason he drew his weapon was from Grayson's actions, not, and I repeat, not from anything that SONYA Massey did. Foltz asked Deputy Farley about the validity of his report and whether he saw or heard water running. Foltz asked Deputy Farley, "What clarification are you trying to put in if you don't remember your report?" Foltz then approached Deputy Dawson Farley with his report. It said that Sean Grayson is fidgeting in his chair, eyes transfixed on his former partner, Deputy Dawson Farley. Foltz questioned Deputy Dawson Farley about his clarified report. Farley filed his initial report on July the 9th. Again, this is key. Deputy Dawson Farley filed his initial report on July the 9th. He then reached out to ISP to clarify his report on August the 6th. That's bizarre. Foltz points out the fact that Sean Grayson was indicted July 17th. So there are some questions there. Again, I have to be honest and fair. So there's a question between these two reports. Foltz, again, as one of Grayson's defense attorneys, emphasized the fact that Detective Farley had 2 months probation left and decided to go to ISP to clarify what Farley says are mistakes in his initial report. Foltz completed his questioning, and Millhiser did not want to do a redirect. They went on break. And the jury, as we entered the courtroom, and watching the footage recorded by the body-worn camera of Deputy Dawson Farley. Now, it is written that the jury was very quiet and very attentive watching this video. Disturbingly, however, in my opinion, it is also written by someone there in the courtroom that Grayson has yawned at least several times viewing the footage. Now, to be fair, he could have been tired, but again, given some of his behavior, that could just be a part of his makeup, which in my opinion is not that good. Grayson, according to reports, doesn't watch any of the footage playing after he yells at Massey to drop the pot of water. Further, it says members of the Massey family are crying watching the footage of Deputy Farley holding a rag to SONYA Massey's wounds. Again, of Deputy Dawson Farley, not Sean Grayson. Again, Why did Sean Grayson delay activating his body-worn camera? I find that odd. Members of Massey's family left the courtroom at that time, and according to reports, there were members of the jury that looked visibly bothered, hands covering their mouths and eyes averted. Even some of Grayson's family and friends looked visibly bothered. The body cam footage shows that Deputy Dawson Farley's hands were shaking from shock as he described it from the witness stand. It also says that the jury, overcome by what they saw, passed tissues amongst themselves. It also says, and this is very key, that some of Grayson's family members couldn't watch some of the footage. Grayson and the family and the body cam footage states, and this is to me just something that someone with no heart, just a horrible person would say. I'm not even going to waste my stuff then. He then drops his medical bag on the floor of SONYA Massey's living room. I repeat, Grayson stated, I'm not even going to waste my med stuff then. And then he drops his bag on the floor of SONYA Massey's living room. What an evil and ugly thing to say. For someone who feared for their life and acted in self-defense, Mr. Grayson, you sure got yourself together mighty fast, in my opinion, to say something evil and heartless as that. Retired Deputy Chief Anthony Mayfield is the fourth witness. Mayfield has retired from Sangamon County Sheriff's Office, and Millhiser begins his questioning as it relates to Chief Mayfield's previous role as Chief Deputy and what those responsibilities entailed. Mayfield determined that Grayson made policy violations, including use of force violation, standard conduct, activation of body-worn camera. Again, why, Sean Grayson? Why didn't you activate your body-worn camera? Event medical response violations, and that relates to not even thinking or perhaps not even wanting to try to render medical aid. That was day 3 of the case, the Red Room case of Sean Grayson, who on July the 6th discharged his weapon 3 times. And the life of SONYA Massey was lost as a result. Now, I want you to pay attention to a few little clips. This is from superiors of Sean GRAYSON. "7 months on. How are you still employed by us?" Again, this is from a superior speaking to Sean GRAYSON. "Others will say that you have no integrity and you're lying. If we can't trust what you say and what you see, we can't have you in our uniform. So how in the hell was all of these things overlooked or bypassed or swept under the mat, and this man you see before you gets hired by Sangamon County?" And that's not all, that's just a few. It ends up taking the life. Again, he's stating it was self-defense of SONYA Massey. We'll be back with day 4 at another time. Thank you for tuning in, and please, any comments you may have as it relates to this horrible, horrible case, please be sure to leave them in the comment section. Until part 2, please be safe, be well, and be healthier. Bye-bye for now.